very happy to see familiar faces, colleagues, friends, full house. So congratulations, Derek, and your team for a successful presential gathering. So I will give an overview on latest trends and data based on the UNWTO World Tourism Barometer, and I hope you are all familiar with that publication. We all know that the pandemic was the worst crisis ever for our sector. But we need to know where were we to know where are we heading to. And the pandemic in those years of 2020, 2021, and 2022 had a huge impact on international tourist arrivals. Those are overnight visitors with a loss of 2.6 billion international tourist arrivals in those 3 years, but also in export revenues from tourism with a loss of 2.6 trillion US dollar. And of course, a huge impact on the economic contribution of tourism reflected in a loss of 4.2 trillion US dollars of tourism direct GDP. So this is important to know because this reflects the huge impact, the dramatic impact of the pandemic in millions of livelihoods and of course in millions of businesses, especially small and medium enterprises. But this is also important because we need to be aware that the tourism sector, this sector where we all participate and we are all engaged in, represents 27% of the world's total exports of services, 7% of the world total exports of goods and services, creates millions of jobs, especially for women and young people. So this is also important to know as a context to explain I will say the remarkable resilience and sustained recovery of international tourism from a dramatic drop and unprecedented decline of 72% in 2020 to a recovery of 84% in January, July 2023 of pre-pandemic levels, of those 2019 levels. This is due, of course, to strong pent-up demand, to the recovery of several outbound markets, source markets, and of course, to the lifting of restrictions in most countries. And this recovery, this sustained recovery, this rebound is reflected in the performance of the different world regions, with the Middle East achieving 20% above those pre-pandemic levels, Africa recovering 92% of those international tourist arrivals recorded in 2019, Europe with 91% with strong and robust intra-regional demand, and also with strong USA visitors from the US market, Americas with 80%, 87%, and Asia Pacific, of course, catching up because further to the reopening, to the recent reopening of several markets and destinations. But this is also interesting because you can see the pattern also of the recovery of world arrivals. And you can see that 2023, with the data we have from January to July, already is following the pattern of 2019, which make us also think about policies, about planning, about dispersal, also about maybe doing things differently. And of course, international tourism receipts also follow the recovery of international tourist arrivals, but we are witnessing a faster recovery of international tourist receipts due to longer stays during the pandemic, due to a willingness to spend more by travelers, and of course, with a component of inflation. This is why also we see those numbers of international tourism receipts. And if we see the receipts, the recovery of receipts, those earnings from international tourism by region, we also see that those numbers following the recovery of international arrivals, with Asia the Pacific, of course, lagging a little bit behind, but gradually also recovering. It's important also, and all that data can be found in the UNWTO Tourism Recovery Tracker, which is one of the modules of the UNWTO Tourism Data Dashboard. And this is intended for helping industry stakeholders to have real-time access to updated and timely data to make data-driven decisions, and of course, to enable that transformation of data to actionable insights. So we have put together key indicators from our statistics database, from our own department's also intelligence database, to build this recovery tracker, which I guess you are using. So this is an example, of course, of how we have expanded also, besides those traditional indicators, incorporating data from data providers, from institutions such as Google, Forward Keys, or IATA, to provide a holistic approach to the data, traditional and also big data. And this is one of the outcomes. As you can see, there's also a visualization, because this is also one of the objectives of the dashboard, to enhance visualization of data for a better understanding. And you can see, for example, passenger demand, international passenger demand, recovering in line with those international tourist arrivals. And for example, seat capacity, domestic one, already reaching or exceeding pre-pandemic levels. But we have data for accommodation also. And there you can not only find in one single place all those indicators, but you are also able to compare the different indicators by region, by sub-region, by country. This is another example when you can see the monthly change in arrivals or in receipts or in expenditure by region or sub-region. This is the year to date. This is by grouping also, which is also very interesting. What is the performance, for example, of seats or the U-27? This is also a set of indicators that you can find also in the dashboard, which is not only related to the performance of international tourism, but also you can find indicators related to domestic tourism, to the economic impact, such as jobs or GDP, to domestic tourism, and to also see what is the seasonality of tourism flows. This is, of course, our collaboration with IATA. And as you can see, most of the almost 200 destinations in the world have lifted COVID-19 related restrictions. So it means that the world is open to business again. And if we look ahead, based on this data, we have our scenarios for 2023. And as you can see, tourism is on track to full recovery. We expect, based on our scenarios, that international tourist arrivals will reach between 80%, 85%, or 80% to 95% in 2023, perhaps closer to 90% at the end of the year. Of course, this is in a context of continuous certainty. It's true that international tourism defies a very challenging, I will say, context, geopolitical one, economic one, but that environment, that uncertain environment remains. And if we complement what the data shows with the sentiment expressed by the UNWTO panel of tourism experts, which allow us to build a UNWTO confidence index, these professionals indicate that 37% of responses indicate that recovery of 2019 levels will happen in 2024. 21% indicate 2025 or later, while the remaining 42% indicate already achieve pre-pandemic levels in their destinations or on the way to achieve in 2023. And what are the main factors weighing on the recovery of international tourism? The challenging economic environment remains a critical factor weighing on the recovery of international tourism, with persisting inflation, with rising oil prices, translating into higher transport and accommodation costs, which can have an impact on spending patterns, with some tourism seeking for value for money, or making shorter trips, or traveling closer to home. Of course, the geopolitical uncertainty environment is another key element. So if we strongly believe that by working together, we can learn from each other and we can make tourism better. This is why we initiated in 2021 an initiative with the European Travel Commission, which is called the Data Lab Initiative, to exchange, share knowledge for capacity building. Yes, I'm finishing. Thank you. And we have developed a series of webinars and presential sessions on different topics, ranging from managing tourism flows to destinations in reputation. The European Travel Commission, of course, represents the European NTOs. So those webinars are an excellent platform to exchange views, because this is also another way to grasp a little bit what is happening and what are the different solutions that are being implemented, what are the different experiences. So we invite also maybe a representative, and I see Sergio here, who has been and is a very active and decisive, I will say decisive actor in this initiative. So we invite a representative that could be interested in sharing his or her experience to a webinar of the Data Lab Initiative. But also, let me just share, and I will finish with this slide, an example of how to measure to manage better. We undertook with FAO a report on understanding and quantifying mountain tourism. This study revealed the challenge of the lack of data, but also the ways of innovating. I mean, how can we innovate where there's a lack of data? And we found out that there are interesting initiatives, for example, from the Instituto Nacional de Estadísticas, the Spanish National Statistics Institute, to integrate mobile data for measurement, but not only at the national level, but also at the municipal level, regional level. And this is also very interesting if you want to have an additional approach, to your traditional data. But also, there's an interesting also case, and I don't know if South Tyrol is present here. Yes, here, right there. Of also trying to understand, I mean, through those three dimensions of tourism, sustainable, economic, environmental, how can we, with those indicators, we also can give an overview, because there's a lack of data to quantify mountain tourism. We found out that 9% to 16% of international tourism were related to mountain tourism, but it was almost impossible to have the big picture because domestic tourism, I mean, lacks of data. So it's also an initiative, and maybe for us also some way of thinking to become innovative and to try to come up also with different approaches. So with that, I'm finished, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Michel.